Johnathan Kott in for a moment. Jonathan's a Democratic strategist, but just looking at this from kind of a 30,000-foot view, I think it does raise an issue that we've talked about in the past. How old is too old? I started, but there's no age limit, right? So we've seen Strom Thurmond years ago was 100 years old. Dianne Feinstein, and well documented, was I guess she was about 90. People have died in office. What about this issue? And if there's going to be any momentum to maybe term limits or something like that?
I don't think you're going to see term limits because the people that would be impacted by term limits are the ones who would have to vote on it. And
right.
That's why you're probably not going to see that happen. Look, I think there are two sides to the coin. Yes, there has to be something that we do to have people who don't serve out to their death, right? Like that has to be something we can put in place and fix. But we also need people in there who are seasoned and understand how things work, because you don't want the place run by 35-year-olds. No offense to 35-year-olds, but you need people in there who understand how. No, not at all. I think AOC, we need voices like that in there. But you also need voices like my old boss, Joe Manchin, who's 77. But Joe Manchin can outrun me and outlast me. He would tire me out by the end of the day.
It does depend on the person, right? It depends on the person sometimes. I want to put up the numbers on generations, because once you get into your 80s, though, I do wonder whether or not that's a conversation we should be having. So we have the breakdown of Congress by generation. So like the silent generation, for example, people born from the year 1925 to 45. I mean, there's still 5.5% of the Congress is that generation. Almost half the Congress are baby boomers. The youngest boomer is 60, oldest is 78 now, and then you get into some of the younger members of the Congress. But this idea that people in their 80s and their 90s are still working in a job this demanding, one of them President of the United States, another about to be, and will be 82 as well by the time he leaves. I mean, there is a conversation worth having here, right, about how we kind of run the country, because they're in the highest positions of power. Mitch McConnell's another example. Someone obviously had health problems, and was the leader in the Senate.
Absolutely. I think the problem is the people that can make that decision are the voters, and they keep sending some of these people back. True. That's also that's the power of incumbency. But then you look at people like Chuck Grassley. Chuck Grassley is as with it as any member in the Senate. He is as active as any member in the Senate. If you see Chuck Grassley in the halls, he can physically run circles around most of those members, and I think he's 90. So, it really depends on the members. But there is something where if the member can't serve, and somebody like Representative Granger, who hasn't been there for 6 months, somebody has to step in and say, look, the people of Texas aren't being represented anymore, and you need to step aside. Something like that is just too egregious to let happen.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that nobody noticed it, I think, again, it's like, wow, somebody should have picked up on this. I think that's something to do with the type of news coverage, and whether there's enough local news coverage, which would be the people, I think, paying attention to a local member of Congress like this. You mentioned term limits, and this has always been the argument against it, is that, to your point, people that want to stay in office are never going to vote for them. Ro Khanna, who's younger than these people, the congressman from California, tweeted the following: Kay Granger's long absence reveals the problem with a Congress that rewards seniority and relationships more than merit and ideas. We have a sclerotic gerontocracy. We need term limits. We need to get big money out of politics so a new generation of Americans can run and serve. And they see Massey says he's more concerned about congressmen of dementia and are still voting as opposed to not voting, I suppose. But what about that? The issue that you talked about, you need experienced people, yeah, but you also need people with good ideas. And are we rewarding one over the other?
You do. You need a balance of both. But I think part of the problem is, to get elected, you usually have to be very wealthy. And usually people in their early 30s or early 40s aren't millionaires. And that's basically what Congress has become. It's
especially
become,
the Senate.
People in their 50s and 60s who are millionaires, who can take a year and a half off, run for office, and then come to D.C. and serve and make, $174,000 a year. So there has to be a balance. I don't know what's going to fix it, but Ro Khanna is right. We reward seniority. The longer you're here, the better position you have, the better office you have, the better committee you have. I think The Wire once said it: seniority sucks unless you're senior.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.